do you write good overpowered characters? My first tip is give them some sort of limitation. While this character is really overpowered, that doesn't mean they shouldn't have limitations, and giving them limitations makes them more natural and realistic as characters. For example, they might only have a time limit with their powers. They might only be able to use their powers in a certain way or a certain method. They might have limitations on other skills rather than just their powers. So as you create your overpowered characters, consider what could limit them as characters, and that will make them more realistic overall. My second tip is give them a specialized focus power. Now, while your character is super overpowered, of course, you shouldn't make them overpowered at absolutely everything, because that can get confusing after a while if your character is good at every single skill in the world. Your character might be really specifically good at wielding swords or ranged weapons or magic, and by focusing on one main ability rather than making your character overpowered in multiple abilities, it makes your characters more realistic and natural. The third tip is consider what can defeat your character. While your character is very overpowered and strong, it can get a little bit tedious over the course of the story if your character is constantly able to defeat all of the enemies and is always very powerful and always has that plot armor protecting them from any bad events. Now, of course, I'm not saying that your overpowered character has to be made weak, of course. However, I do recommend thinking of a way that your character could potentially be defeated. Consider as you're developing your overpowered character, what could happen that could defeat this character? For example, your character might have magical powers, very, very powerful and strong magical powers, except if they go in the water, all of those powers disappear and they can't use their powers. So the water could be a potential way of defeating that character type. Or there might be a really powerful enemy that your character has who is just as strong as your character, and that is a potential threat to your character. Like I mentioned earlier, your character might have a certain time limit, and so that could also be a way your character could essentially be defeated because they have to wait a certain amount of time before they can use their powers again. As you develop your overpowered characters, consider what could actually defeat or temporarily prevent your characters from using their powers in order to make it more interesting when your character does eventually use their powers again.